Another thing is firewall technology. What is firewall? Basically, a firewall is a system, device, a hardware, a software, a combination of these to put between the trusted and untrusted boundary and network. We call them a firewall, which protect your data, your assets, your traffic, your things, your checking. We call them a firewall. Definition of firewall is very small to tell you. There is firewall is nowadays do many things which you cannot describe in two sentences. What is firewall? It can do netting for you, it can do routing for you, it can protect your devices, it can do like a IPS, it can do IDS, it can do so many things to monitor, to check the traffic, incoming, outgoing, everything it can do for you, a firewall. The next generation firewall normally. It can protect your data and assets. And a firewall can be a software, it can be a hardware, it can be a cloud based, it can be a virtual, it can be a combination of all these. So it's not physically one things to tell you that this is a firewall. There are a virtual firewall as well, cloud based firewall as well, hardware firewall as well, software based firewall as well. So it's basically packet filtering, and they are using so many techniques to protect your data. Firewall has been divided in three main generations. First generation firewall, second generation firewall, and third generation firewall. Like in human, we say that this guy is old generation person, he don't know anything. Like normally we say to our parents and elders that they don't know in this new technology, they don't know. Now everything has changed and they are thinking old mind people and such things. We say like conservative person and such thing. Yeah, we use this word. Yeah, normal word. The same is in firewall. In first generation firewall is the old method, the conservative mind people. They have their own mindset. So in first generation firewall was called packet filtering firewall. We will discuss about packet filter firewall. And second generation was application layer firewall. And the third generation which we are using is called stateful firewall, either next generation firewall, which do inspection properly. We will discuss all these three a bit later, but this is called firewall. Firewall, a wall which we have a fire to protect your inside so nobody can go and come without your permission, which identify good data and bad data, good people and bad people. Just in few words. Otherwise, I told you it's not possible to explain firewall. There are so many firewall. Top of them is Palo Alto firewall, then Fortigate firewall, then as a Juniper. We have so many checkpoints, Cisco, and so many. Top 10 firewall, I will tell you about those as well. But on the top there is a Palo Alto, and the second one is we are using Fortinet firewall. And why we are using, I will tell you about that one as well. So the first one is stateful firewall. What is stateful? Actually, stateful firewall keeping record state table. There is a connection table, either state table. So whenever somebody go out from home and when they are coming back to home, so security guard will not stop them, because security guard will say this guy just left the home. I know him. He belong to this home. So the return will be allowed automatically, because he put the registry note that this guy go out, so he has come back, he can go come back anytime. So this type of firewall we call them stateful firewall. Basically stateful firewall, when you initiate traffic from a secure zone and when you go out and when the traffic is back, so it will check the connection table. I think so if I mention here this one, if you ingress from outside interface, it will check first existing connection. Is there any connection that guy go out? If yes, so it will allow you directly, because you initiate traffic from inside and you go back, so return traffic is allowed because they're keeping record. Such type of firewall we call them stateful firewall, and any next generation firewall have this capability. Let me show you from here if I can run it, because in my server is become slowing. This is the ASA firewall. It can be in any firewall. It can be ASA firewall, it can be Fortigate, it can be Palo Alto, can be Checkpoint, it can be any. So for any firewall, they all have the same capability. So I have, this is outside R2 and R1 is inside. So let me initiate a traffic from my inside to go to R2. So let me ping R2. Okay. And this is R2. R2 IP is 24.2. Okay. So let me go here. Let me run R2 as well. And let me run ASA firewall as well. Okay, for some reason, so let me off this system so that we have some resources. For some reason the system is very slow. Okay, so if it can, okay, R2 we don't need. Okay, this is R2, I'll make in the middle this one. Okay, let me ping 192.168.23.2 and repeat this one 1000 times. Okay, where is the topology? This one. Okay, definitely I can ping, and let me go to ASA firewall, and here I will say show connection table, which I told you connection table. So it means stop this one. Let me regenerate or more data. Either I can do telnet as well. So let me generate and quickly come here. Here is a connection. I say ICMP Internet Control Message Protocol outside 23.2 from inside 12.1, this one. Idle time in bytes has been sent, and this is a flag. This is a connection table. So that's why when this person is sending traffic, they are receiving it as well. Because when the return traffic is coming, so it say the connection is already there. This is the connection. But let me do from R2. Because from R1 I can ping R2 to definitely the ping reply is coming back. Yeah, there is a echo reply. So if the echo is coming, so definitely R2 can also ping. Yeah, it's this what we thinking. So ping 192.168.12.1. Can I ping? No. But when I'm pinging from R1 to R3, it's pinging. I can receive traffic from R2. But when I'm generating traffic directly from R2 to R1 is not going. Why? Because from R1, when I hit the server, so the traffic came back and I receive it. So why not if I initiate it directly, why is stopping me? Because of connection table. When I'm directly, suppose when I go out from home, for, maybe I want to buy some bread or milk or something. So when I come back, so on security guard will allowed me because he know me that this guy just left the home and is coming back. There is already a connection established. But when somebody came directly from outside and coming to my home, the security guard will stop them due to stateful firewall until and unless you get a permission. This is another story. I'm not saying that why he is not allowed. There are so many methods. We have to create a policy for him. He has to show to security guard some identity to allow him. That is a different story. But stateful firewall keeping record, and I show you, show connection can see. Another one is stateless firewall. Stateless, they are not keeping any record. So this is an issue. It means even if you go out from inside, what was? Now I no need this one. We saw this one. This was the stateful firewall. Let me show you stateless firewall. Now I have a stateless firewall which is a router and I configure here access list. And I allowed PC1 to go outside PC2, but return is not allowed. So the PC is not coming. Let me close and on this one again. So let me put this one in the middle and PC1 is here. Now the same story like this one, but we will see SR1 is reachable to PC2. If it is not, so then why? And if it is, so why? So let's see that on this story. So then you will get the idea about a stateless firewall. It means for stateless firewall, it's not keeping records. So if you go out from the building, when you come back, so you need to take permission again. Like in previous case, that was my home. Security guard know me because he is working with me from last 10 years. So when I go out for a bread, when I come back, he didn't tell me anything and he allowed me. But when I go to some other suppose office and I have a permission card once, when I visit suppose a hotel, Marriott hotel or something suppose. But when I'm going next time, they will stop me again. Even if you say no, 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 I went out for a cigarette and I'm coming back, he will say no. And the last batch, I give them example of this stateful firewall. And you can normally when you go to any club, so they put something on your hand, on your kalai. So what is this called? I don't know. On your hand, I will say. They will put a stamp. So when you go inside your club and when you come out for a cigarette or whatever, so when you go back, they will check on the touch your hand. If the stamp is there, they will make you allowed. This is called stateful firewall because they say that yes, 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 they got a stamp. He was inside, then he come back out, then he can go inside. But when somebody came directly to enter the club, either pub, so the security guard they will stop them that they don't have a stamp. It means this is your first time and you have to take a permission to pay something. But in stateless, it's not like this. There is no stamp, no nothing. So if I ping from PC1 to PC3, the same like I done in the previous case, 123.2, it's not allowing me. Do you think the packet is not going? No, the packet is reaching. Let me type debug IP ICMP and let me send the packet again. He is receiving. Let me see the packet now. After a while, you will see the packet here. He is pinging. The packet is reaching here. After a while, you will see because the system is slow for some reason. So it show me after a while. You will see that because I ping here 23, sorry 24. Yes, 24 or 23. Maybe okay, so I received 23. Look at it say that source 23.2, destination is 12.1. 12.1 is this guy. He says somebody sent me the packet but administratively prohibited unreachable receive because there is a rule IP access list. I say allowed 12.1 which is allowed from inside to go to 23 10 matches, but I said deny any and on the interface of outside show running interface E0/1 there is a rule that nobody is allowed for inside and nobody is allowed from nobody means that. So because they're not keeping any records, so 12 go out but 12 is not allowed to come back, not like this one. You got my point? It's the same story. Why there is not allowed? Because this is a stateless. Is not keeping record. There is no such way to keep the record that yes, if 12.1 go out, so 23, so 23 are allowed to come back to 12. Keep the record. No, there is no such record for this one. So this is called stateless firewall. And normally we are using ACL, which I show you. I configure ACL there. So you need two rules to either 2, 3, whatever the rule you need for inside and outside to allow, but this is not in this case. The third firewall is packet filter firewall. The same which I show you, this is we call them packet filter firewall as well. When we configure ACL, accessless, standard accessless, name ACL, infrastructure ACL, time-based ACL, dynamic ACL, extended ACL, all these things when we configure them, we call them packet filter firewall. It's keeping the record like a source destination, source port destination, the same which I configure here. This is ACL. This time I say IP. You can use the port number as well, 80, 80, 443, whatever you can say. So this type of firewall, we call them packet filter firewall, old firewall. Another is a proxy firewall. Proxy basically firewall is in the middle. They are receiving the traffic and behalf of the client, they give them to the server. And when their return traffic comes, so they give it to the client back. So he stored the detail, everything. Behalf of the client, he is doing everything. But this is single point of failure. If this device down, your whole internet network will be not reachable to outside. So this type of firewall, we call them proxy firewall. Another is application firewall. Now it's good. This is a second generation firewall now. It will check not only the source and destination, but it will check by application like a DNS, SMTP, HTTP, HTTPS, SSL, whatever. So this type of firewall, we call them application firewall. It's checking by application layer, not by port number. Okay. And another one is personal firewall. What is personal firewall? The firewall which is installed in your system, like we have so many firewall installed here, like this one. And when do we have a built-in firewall as well? This one which protect your firewall. Okay. And also we can install our personal firewall. There are so many like Kaspersky and so many other firewall which you can install. This is software based firewall which protect your end device. So we call them personal firewall. Another type of firewall is transparent firewall. Transparent means it is work like a layer 2, like a switch. You can assign the same subnet IP. Normally firewall work like a router. So you cannot assign same range to the router interfaces. It will give you overlap error. Like suppose if I go to that one, suppose I have show IP interface brief, two different I range. Yeah, let me assign go to E0/1 and assign from the same range IP. Even different IP, suppose 101, 255, 255. Do you think it will accept? No. Sorry, IP address. It will give overlap error to me. It say overlap with E0/0. He say you are, I think so, mad in the head. And routed means that your every interface has a different subnet IP, different network. Then you need a switch if you are using same subnet. But in the case of transparent firewall, you can assign same range IP and it will work on the basis of MAC addresses, not on the IP addresses. And we call them a transparent firewall. The same technology, this is transparent firewall, we call them in Cisco. But in Palo Alto, we call them virtual wire firewall, either V-wire. Same technique, same method, same range you can use, same network you can connect like a switch, we call them virtual wire. And the same technology we will use in Fortigate as well, which when we go in detail. Another is a traditional network firewall, like a normal packet filter firewall. We call them a traditional firewall as well, which is doing on the basis of IP address and port number, blocking and receiving, which anybody can bypass. Anybody can change their IP to bypass the traffic. So we call them traditional network firewall. Same, we have a zone-based firewall. Zone-based firewall, you can make a firewall from the router, Cisco S router. You can create a zone and make them a firewall. So a Cisco IOS router there is a possibility to make them as a work like a router, like a firewall. But there, if the router iOS support that one, then you can create a zone-based firewall, not like a ACL. It's a different way. Another type of firewall is cloud-based firewall. When you deploy your firewall in the cloud, because everything is moving to cloud, like a firewall as a services and security as a services is two example of cloud-based firewall. Same like a software as a services, so we have a firewall as a services. Same we have infrastructure as a services in cloud, so we have a firewall as a services. And last but not the least is a virtual firewall. When you deploy your firewall virtually in VMware, either in GNS3, either in EVENG, either in EXI, and everywhere virtually in virtual environments, we call them a virtual firewall. And every firewall have virtual edition as well nowadays. Now coming to the end part, this is UTM. UTM means Unified Thread Management. UTM, you will in most interview they will ask you what is the difference between UTM and next generation firewall. This is the most widely question when they ask you in the interview what is the difference between UTM and next generation firewall. So let's discuss what is UTM. Basically UTM means Unified Thread Management. It is the combination of packet filter, proxy, IDS, IPS protection and web proxy and so many things. Quality of services, antivirus, URL, data leak prevention, IPS, IDS, all these things. But separately, it will deal the packet one by one. Like suppose if you enter the bank or somewhere, okay, in first place security guard check you, then he give it to another person. Go to the counter. Counter give you what is called a token. Then you go to another counter and they sign your documents. Then you go to another counter and they check your file. Then you go to another counter and they check, and you will say what the hell is this. I pass so many counter, in the end you say no, it's not acceptable. The same things doing by UTM. The packet will come, it will check for URL filtering, then it will pass to the other one, then data leak prevention, then it will go to antivirus, then it will go to IPS, then it will go to policy, then it will go to quality of services, and so many things it will go there. So it's slow process. Is doing the next generation firewall job, but very slow process. But a next generation firewall has three main things: user ID, app ID, and content ID. These three things make next generation firewall difference from UTM and any other firewall. Otherwise, next generation firewall have all the thing which is a traditional firewall have. Whatever we study, like a traditional firewall, packet filter firewall, stateful firewall, stateless firewall, whatever we study, all those things are already included in next generation firewall. But the difference between other firewall and next generation firewall is three things: app ID, user ID, and content ID. App ID means next generation firewall not doing thing by port or services, is doing by application. Like Facebook is application, like Facebook is chat room is another application, content is another application. YouTube is a different application, YouTube video is a different application. They will check by this way. So this is called next generation firewall. Then another thing is user ID. It will not check only by source IP, but it can check the user by username. So this is another good thing, because the IP anybody can spoof their IP, but user you cannot, because you need a username and password to log in. Then if you, then definitely you can bypass. And the last thing is content ID. Content means anything mentioned here is called contents. To check the antivirus, to check IPS, to check the proxy, quality of service, IDS, so many things which we will discuss later in the course. All these things to check the data for the any maybe hiddenly there is something. And the fourth thing with next generation firewall do a deep packet inspection. It's like a DNA test, which none of the firewall will do DNA test, and DNA test can never be false because DNA keep all your detail. Your corona test can be negative and later on it can be positive, it can be wrong, it can be anything. Any test can be your blood test, your anything, but the what is called, I forgot the name. Okay, so this is called deep packet inspection. This thing only do by next generation firewall. Now coming to the last part, what is then the difference between UTM and next generation? Because he is also doing URL and he is also doing URL. This is also doing DLP and it's also doing quality of service, the same IPS, IDS and so thing. So then what is the difference between next generation and so the difference between is uh, they are doing by one shot and they are doing by part. They will do like I give an example of go to this counter, this counter, this counter. Next generation will say, okay, just security guard check them. Just come, that's it, set. We will do everything for you. In 1 minute, your file will be ready and go away. That's it. So next generation doing in one way and by one shot, and they will do it by slowly process to make you tired. Okay. Last thing related to firewall, the question is normally they will ask you an interview where the heck to deploy firewall. Do you recommend me where to deploy a firewall? You will say no, there is no such thing to deploy firewall. You can deploy firewall inside, you can deploy firewall on edge, you can deploy in perimeter, you can deploy on your edge, you can deploy inside your data center, you can distinguish two different department to put a firewall. So there is no such way, either no rule to deploy a firewall only externally. No, it can be anywhere in your what is called in your network as per your requirement. So you can deploy a firewall inside, outside, in data center and edge or perimeter.